Welcome to Conversations, Congregation Emmanuel's weekly interview show. I'm Jason Plotkin, the program director of Congregation Emmanuel, and every week, Wednesdays at noon, we bring in someone from the community, the sports world, or wherever to talk really about anything going on as it relates to society, the pandemic, and really just try to engage people and learn about things. And I'm really excited this week. We have a good friend of mine from my days at Sam Houston State University who has gone on to big things, the play-by-play voice of the Corpus Christi Hooks, the Astros AA affiliate, Mike Coffin. Mike, welcome to the show.
Mr. Plotkin, thanks for having me, man. It's great to see you.
Yeah, it really is good to see you. Mike, for those who don't know you in the world that's watching this broadcast, I really think it's a neat story how you became the play-by-play voice of the Hooks. Tell us what you did going from Sam Houston State to the Astros to the Hooks, if you don't mind.
Well, for those who don't know me, it's probably a wide congregation of folks who don't know me. But yeah, I've been here at the Hooks since 2007. I started as an intern. It was the third year actually of the Hooks actually being here in Corpus Christi. We're a AA affiliate of the Astros. And I grew up in Orange, Texas, went to the university at Sam Houston State in Huntsville. That's where I got to meet you. I got my big break working for the SID department, the Sports Information Department with Paul Ridings, and got some time doing some student broadcasting at the station there at the Dan Rather School of Broadcasting. So a tremendous experience at Sam Houston State. Love the town, love the campus. I'm sure we'll get into that in a little bit. But from there, I got an internship with the Astros, and then I got an internship with the Hooks, and finally, they gave me a full-time gig, and I've been here ever since. It's been an awesome ride.
Now, Mike, you brought up Sam Houston State. I think for those who are not familiar with the broadcast lineage of the university, you had Dan Rather, and then you look at the world we in Houston are used to. You got Steve Sparks, who does Astros broadcast, Craig Ackerman, Randy McElvoy, Adam Clanton, a lot of familiar names and faces and radio voices. And you're just, in my opinion, another guy who's contributing to that proud history at Sam Houston State.
Well, and really, you and I are very fortunate just to be in that environment. You mentioned all those guys, and they certainly built the foundation. And what I loved about Sam was that it was small enough. It felt like a typical hometown where you could get involved right away. Yet there were big time sports happening, and there were things to cover every single day. And just that practical experience of working and learning on the fly, messing up, learning from your mistakes, things that you really can't get out of a classroom, we were able to experience, tenfold with the Bearcats. And from great professors that we had, like Tony DeMars, Tommy Boris, all those guys. We had Mickey Herskowitz come down and do a class in sports writing and sports broadcasting, and Mike Capps from Round Rock, also a Bearcat alum. He came back down and did a seminar, and just being able to network with all these professionals and pick their brain. And they were so patient with me, and I wouldn't be here today without that experience. There's no doubt about it.
Right. And and we had a great time at Sam Houston. There were big time athletic events. I mean, you and I saw the Bearcats in men's basketball beat Texas Tech. We saw some great moments making the NCAA tournament in 2003 and a lot of good stuff. But, you are a baseball guy first and foremost. You're doing what you love. The pandemic's happening right now. There's no baseball. I mean, I guess there's Korean baseball organization games.
Are you staying up at 4 a.m.? You getting up and watching those games, Jason?
No, I can't say I am. But, as someone who loves baseball, what is the thing that's most difficult that's changing your routine right now from what you normally would do at this time of year?
My wife and I had this conversation last night because I feel like with everyone else, each new day brings something else that you don't anticipate, when it comes to staying at home, socially distancing. And for me, it's the structure. We're still working on stuff related to the Hooks here from our respective homes, but we have different projects here and there, and we got to get those done in a time frame. But outside of that, we're really kind of on our own. And this, Jason, just the rhythm of a sports season is so comforting. And especially baseball, because it's every day. And you just get into routine, and you get used to seeing the same folks over and over again. It's your extended baseball family, from the ushers to the guys that work in the press box at Whataburger Field, to the Texas League broadcasters, to the coaching staffs, to all the players. And I mean, it's just weird to even think about missing those 8-9 hour bus rides, but that's kind of where we're at. The good news is that, with these advances in technology, we're still able to connect. I'm able to talk to our staff and with the Hooks routinely. We have a meeting every morning and we work on various projects. The Texas League broadcasters, we all get on a Zoom call every Wednesday at 5 o'clock just to check in, see how guys are doing. I think it's just the routine and the people that I really miss the most. But of course, the added benefit is you get to stay home, and I have a young family. My son is 3 years old, and getting able to hang out with him every day because it's a grind during the year. Our schedule's 140 games, 70 of which are at home. The rest are on the road. And even when the Hooks are in town, I'm really at the ballpark. So this has been such a blessing. And, it just goes to show you that you have to look for the best in every scenario.
And you've always been that. You're always looking for the positives. You and I dealt with some very difficult seasons, particularly in baseball while we were there before the program really took off. But, you brought up your affiliation with the Hooks and how you're meeting with people every day. I think to Joe sports fan or Joe Blow out in the community watching this, they've seen some of the neat things that minor league teams are doing in minor league at their ballparks and whatnot. What are some of the things the Corpus Christi Hooks are doing to remain visible in the Corpus community and beyond right now?
Well, it seems like everything else, we're kind of doing things in phases. And initially, our objective was just to stay in the conversation and to use our platform on social media as a way to highlight what's going well in the community and try and encourage resources to go here, to go there, whether it's, worrying about kids in schools that they can't get their lunch meals, or worrying about our tourism industry, which is a big industry, and taking care of all the waiters and the bartenders and all the people that are in hospitality that aren't working right now. So that was kind of the initial stage, and now things are slowly opening back up. And, we see, regardless of whether or not the Hooks are going to play this year, we see the ballpark as a community rallying point. And, it's a city ballpark. We lease it. And we feel like it's our responsibility to use that building to bring people together as safely as possible. And so this, for example, our first big event, we haven't announced it yet. We should be announcing it. This will air Wednesday, so tomorrow. So we should be announcing it Wednesday. But we're going to have a Father's Day batting practice where folks can sign up and have their dads take BP on the field. They'll get to have a clubhouse experience. They'll get to go to our new indoor batting cages, and their families can watch in the seating bowl as they, take BP on the field and then go shag fly balls in the outfield if they like. And, it's a little bit of summer that we're trying to give to people because people are cooped up and looking for something to do, especially young families. So trying to encourage folks to go outside and be a part of the rebuild and coming back together. And a lot of other clubs have been more aggressive with things they've done at their ballpark, whether it's drive-in movie night at the ballpark in the parking lot, or folks are even renting out elements of the park, whether it's the pool. Round Rock's doing that right now, which looks really cool. You had a team, and I forget the team, Jason, you probably know, that had the Airbnb. They put
the Blue Wahoos in Pensacola.
How wild is that, right? So we're excited about the opportunities that are out there. And for instance, in a couple of weeks, we're going to have a couple high school graduations. That's kind of been the biggest tragedy around here, is that all these high school seniors have lost out on a good chunk of their senior year, and especially student athletes. So just looking for little things to reward those guys and to make sure they're encouraged to continue on, because it really has been a difficult time.
Well, let's take a turn towards the major leagues. And first, I want to highlight the fact that you've had your opportunities to call some games at the big leagues, both during spring training and during the season. What have those experiences been like?
I'm 7-5 in the regular year. So I just have a winning record, not by much. But no, it's been a dream come true. And as a kid who grew up in Orange, Texas, I watched the Astros and listened to the Astros every night. At 7 o'clock, that's where I was. And so just being a lifelong Astros fan and getting to call those games, even just talking to you now kind of sends chills up my spine. So I'm really appreciative of the opportunity the Astros have given me. Robert Ford, Steve Sparks, who you mentioned earlier, Matt Bolts, the radio crew there. They've been so welcoming to me, and they've given me every single opportunity. So I really appreciate that. And, I've witnessed firsthand how tough this business is. And there are a lot of guys in the minor leagues that are talented enough to be in the big leagues, just the opportunity hasn't come yet. And I've been fortunate, given, where I physically live, given who my employer is. Reed Ryan, the former president of the Astros, was a big champion of mine and still is. And it's just, if I hadn't have met these folks and interacted with them and gotten to know them, and they've gotten to know me, I wouldn't have had this chance. So I'm very appreciative of that. And I don't take it for granted. Every single game I get to do, every single spring training game I get to do, I really try and relish it, because no one can take that away, regardless of what happens. If I don't call another, game from here on out, at least I've done big league games, and I'm very, very grateful to be able to say that.
And you will always have a winning record if you don't call another game.
I know, right? Exactly. I was doing really well until a couple of years ago. I got swept in Oakland. Long story, but they were giving me some grief for that back in the day. So
that's funny. We're talking about Major League Baseball. You were in spring training for a bit in March. What are the biggest challenges to get baseball restarted? We'll get to the MLBPA versus the Major League Baseball, but what are some of the biggest challenges from your perspective of being on the road with a minor league team, being with a major league team? What are your perspective? What is the biggest challenges you see?
Well, I just think we don't really know how this is going to go down. And, Major League Baseball in particular has done an exhaustive, exercise in terms of trying to anticipate all the problems that COVID-19 is going to present over the course of a shortened season. And I think it's just keeping these guys healthy and ensuring that we don't have another outbreak within a team, because last thing you want to do is have 2 or 3 guys test positive, and then you have to shut the team down. And if you shut the team down, what does that look like for the league? So I think, it's going to be a challenge to get it started back up, but the pressure is still going to be on each week. And I know that the Major League Baseball is very worried about getting a postseason in. That's why they're trying to get it done before November rolls around, in case a second wave does come back. So I think we're all just kind of reading in the papers and trying to anticipate some things. But this is new ground, new challenges. The fortunate thing is there are very smart people in the case, and I hope they can figure it out. We need to get back to baseball right away.
Now, when you and I were talking the other day, you really did a good job framing it up in layman's terms, why we keep hearing about this 50-game schedule versus 76 or 114, et cetera. For those who are watching, who are seeing some of these numbers flash in front of them as it relates to restarting baseball, what's this 50-game schedule piece, and why are we hearing so much about it? Keep in mind, we are recording this Tuesday, and things are changing rapidly.
And let me preface this by saying I have no background knowledge. From what I'm saying here is what I've gleaned from the newspaper accounts. And it seems like the 50-game schedule can be in place without the players union really coming to some sort of different agreement. This has already been agreed upon in the initial negotiations between the owners and the union. And so right now, the objective for the owners is to expand that season. And the players want that season expanded, whether it's 80 games or 76 or whatever the case may be, because the more games, the more chances the players have to make money. The same is true, to a lesser extent for the owners, because there's still a lot of costs involved. So they're just trying to work this thing out. And, the players agreed to a prorated salary at the outset, with the caveat that if no fans were allowed in the stadiums, that they would have a good faith negotiation as to whether or not that moves in any direction, whether or not the players get less or even more. And so that's what they're negotiating right now. And there's a lot on the line for everyone involved. There's a lot of risk. And so I understand, why things are kind of slowing down in negotiations. But it seems like to me, and again, it's not an expert opinion, but it seems like at the very least, we're going to have something on the order of a 50-game schedule at the very least, which is good for this country. I think we really need it, personally.
And then to the point about the playoffs, them talking about a completed season. The playoffs is where the owners make their money.
Right.
Why is it that the playoffs, is it the television just for the people watching?
Exactly. So the owners are not going to have access to revenue from the gate. They're not going to have parking lot revenue. They're not going to have concession stand revenue. They're not going to have attendance revenue. And a lot of their sponsorships, which are signage pieces or group outings or corporate events, whatever the case may be, branding within the ballpark, those are going to lose value because there aren't physically people there to see them. And so the main revenue source, perhaps maybe even the lone revenue source, is going to be the media money. And these teams have local agreements. For the Astros, their rights are for AT&T, Sportsnet Southwest, for instance. But when you get to the postseason, it's network money. The Fox, the TBSs of the world, and that's big time cash. And that's where the owners are going to make most of their revenue. And traditionally, the players they don't get that media money. They get the gates from all of the postseason attendances. So their cash comes from the folks that attend the division series, the championship series, and the World Series, while the owners take the media money. And so that's what they're talking about right now. They're trying to find some middle ground where the players get a cut of the media money, since there's not going to be attendance in the postseason. And so it seems to me, from the outside looking in, that if the baseball season happens, if there's a 50-game schedule, but it gets cut, if it gets canceled before the postseason, before all the national money comes in, the owners are just going to take a bath. And so that's why they're really worried about getting this season in. They would love to play 140 games and extend it to December if you could, but there's that definite threat and the definite worry of a second wave of COVID-19. I think that's the underlying element here.
Well, I appreciate you laying it out. I always need it in layman's terms. You remember?
Well, and it's confusing for me. So I'm sure what I just said is wrong on some levels, but that's definitely the basic gist of it.
And, talking about some of the proposals we've seen, one of the things that's very interesting is it sounds like the players agreed early on to a universal designated hitter. So for those who are familiar with baseball in the American League, you got the DH. I'm always asking our guest on the show, what do you think is going to stick? Is this something that could potentially stick?
I think so. I think we've seen, I think we will have a universal DH moving forward. That's just my opinion. So, and you and I growing up, I was a National League guy, man. And I really lamented the fact that the Astros went to the American League for various different reasons. Really, the only benefit was able to play the Texas Rangers in league play. But, having, been exposed to minor league baseball and watching the DH and watching all the Astros games, it is kind of nice to see an actual hitter up there, swinging the bat. But it does take some elements away. There's no doubt about it. But, yeah, I do think we will have a universal DH.
That's fascinating. And then one of the other things we're seeing is that the proposal includes larger rosters and taxi squads. You're a guy that is very familiar with the Astros farm system. From seeing it in spring training, from watching the guys as they come up the system. How do you think that having this system with the larger rosters and the taxi squad will impact the prospects coming up the pipeline? And also, what players can you imagine a team saying, okay, this is what we need to do? Like, what kind of, are they looking to put some extra arms, another catcher or two? And what are going to be the needs that these teams have when baseball restarts?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a mix of both, because, if there's no minor league season, then these taxi squads will encompass all of the farmhands that the big league teams have access to, that are actually being trained and are ready to go if needed. So if there's injury or poor performance at the big league level, I think you're going to see a lot of the AAA guys on these taxi squads, and a good chunk of the AA guys as well, players that are maybe a step away from the big leagues that might be able to fill in for that week or two while some guy is down. Because the big fear is that, you had, 3 or 4 weeks of spring training, but then the shutdown, we're in week 12. So it's tough for guys to ramp up. And everyone is on their own really schedule in terms of staying in shape. Some guys have access to batting cages. Some guys have access to pitching mounds. And it's just kind of different across the board. Some folks are being able to slowly come back into Minute Maid Park, specifically for the Astros. A lot of guys, as you know, live in Houston. So they're actually getting to come back and use those facilities. But I do think it's going to be a mix. I think, to your question, we're going to see a few of the different prospects that maybe are 2 or 3 years away from the big leagues, just thrown into the taxi squad to keep them going and to keep them in shape and to keep them involved. And it'd be a great experience, great learning experience for those guys, because they're not having to take up a 25, 26-man roster spot. So I think we're going to see a mix of both. I think we're going to see an expanded Arizona Fall League, which happens after the regular year and before the holidays, where it's normally kind of a showcase prospect circuit. But, for these minor league players who are looking at perhaps, another full off season without games, it does create a challenge.
Now, we were talking about prospects, guys who are 2 or 3 years away. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you, obviously Houston Astros fans watching this are used to hearing the name Forrest Whitley, but what are some of the guys you think might be below the radar that a casual Astros fan might not be familiar with, who's not on the 40-man roster?
Well, I think one guy in particular that he played at AAA last year, first baseman Taylor Jones, a big dude out of Gonzaga, great kid. And, he really made some waves in spring training. And talking to Brian McTaggart, who covered that team from start to finish in spring, that was one of the guys that stood out to him. And, he's learned some different positions. He's played third base. He's played the outfield. This would be the last year of Yuli Gurriel, so there might be a spot for Taylor Jones and the Astros, at some point pretty soon. But for us at AA, what really stood out was the pitching. And Astros fans are familiar with the name Jose Urquidy. He was the Hooks opening day starter, and he wound up throwing 5 shutout in Game 4 of the World Series. So you go from he was in short season 2 years ago. So you go from AA opening night starter to the World Series. That's awfully impressive. But some other fireballers out of the Dominican Republic, guys like Enoli Paredes, Christian Javier, Brian Abreu, these guys throw absolute gas. In the case of Javier, he's kind of got just a little bit of deception. It's a bit of a longer story, but some tremendous upside with these pitching prospects. And I really think that's the strength of the Astros system. The Astros have broken every strikeout record in the minors for the last 2 years. That's been the case in the big leagues as well. And there's a lot of swing and misses. And if these guys can gain a little bit more control, they're going to be pretty salty. That's for sure.
And then the last area I really want to hit with you before we close today is minor league baseball as a whole. I think prior to COVID, we started seeing some proposals for eliminating minor league clubs. We saw that the Sugarland Skeeters, who some of us are familiar with here in Houston, might become an organized ball club. I mean, has COVID changed these conversations? Has it changed anything going on as it relates to this conversation? Or are we in a holding pattern as we wait for Major League Baseball to kind of work through their own things?
Yeah, I think holding pattern is the key term here. I think the negotiations between MILB and Major League Baseball really has shut down because Major League Baseball's first concern, and rightly so, is having a big league season. And so I think once that stuff gets sorted out, once they make an announcement about the big league season, we'll have a much more definitive outlook on where we stand, specifically here in Corpus Christi. But the basic contraction stuff that was swirling around this offseason, I think it's a very real reality. Is kind of redundant, but that's what we're probably going to be looking at next year. And Major League Baseball wanted to contract at 42 teams, right? And a lot of it had to do with short season squads that start up in June. And these are players that come directly from the draft or from extended spring training and go to, in the Astros case, Tri-City in the New York Penn League. And so, Major League Baseball is of the opinion that, there's not much margin for error anymore in terms of evaluating players. And the metrics are so good. The scouts are advanced enough to where they can find big league talent within a reduced amount of players. And so this would call for a big league club, instead of having 4 minor league teams, would have 6. And so that essentially does away with 50 or so players. And so they're just trying to refine that and make that more efficient. And I understand that. And there's a lot of talk about reshuffling the leagues, trying to make it more friendly for the players in terms of closer to their competition, to cut down all these long bus rides. Look at the Hooks, for example. The shortest bus ride for the Hooks in the Texas League is 7 hours long to Frisco, Texas. All right. And the next shortest bus ride is 8 hours to Midland, Texas. And Amarillo's 12 hours away. Springfield, Missouri is 14 hours away. So these are some daunting. I'm glad I'm so short because it really doesn't affect me there on the bus. But these are high-powered, fine-tuned athletes that are doing these overnight bus trips week after week, and it really takes its toll. And so Major League Baseball wants to make that more efficient. And the downside is obviously the communities that would be losing their affiliations. And we talked about it earlier. The ballpark is a big part of towns and getting people together. And so Major League Baseball has floated the idea about having a dream league, and they're shortening the draft. So there's going to be fewer pro players out there, more college guys that are going to be free agents and trying to make a name for themselves. So there's going to be an opportunity for those cities to have teams that are fielded by these prospects who may not have gotten drafted in the first 5 rounds.
I tell you, riding buses, even around the Southland Conference or wherever I was, Sunbelt Conference for a while, that was tough. I mean,
It's
even
tough.
as a young guy, I mean, you're as young as I am. It's a challenge, and I mean, you're working long days. It's a very difficult challenge.
These players have it easy. They don't have it easy, but they of course they do work for a living. I don't, but they'll get home in Corpus at 7 o'clock at night or 7 o'clock in the morning, and they'll sleep till noon, come back to the ballpark. I got to be up. I got a 3-year-old, so when I get in at 7:30, my days is still going. So it really does take its toll.
And then the last thing, I think, with the talk of the Sugarland Skeeters being affiliated, I mean, do you see them being an Astros AAA club or something of that nature? I think we're all kind of like, Sugarland, why that would be interesting, being right there in our backyard.
Well, I have not heard anything, and I really haven't even read much on the subject. But I mean, it makes sense, but we'll see how it plays out. I think everybody's kind of waiting and seeing. I'm really curious to see who comes to the Texas League, that there might even expand the circuit. Right now we have just 8 clubs. And so I'm like you, man. I'm opening up the paper every day and just searching out stuff and trying to find some tidbits here and there. But I really have no idea. It's going to be crazy to see how everything shakes out once the dust settles.
And then on a positive note, we gotta say something positive about the Houston Astros. I mean, what are you most looking forward to once the season gets rolling? And then we'll call it a day.
Yeah, the Astros it was kind of a crossroads for them. Obviously, all the stuff that went down with the sign stealing investigation, but specifically for the Astros and what they can do on the field, they have a chance to make some history. You have back-to-back 100-win campaigns, and the biggest issue for these guys was the pitching, right? Justin Verlander went down with an injury right at the end of spring training. Lance McCullers coming off Tommy John. Jose Urquidy, a bit untested as well. Brad Peacock was injured to boot. So these guys have had a chance to get healthy. And I think that, while this has been very unfortunate, these 12 weeks, it's given the Astros, particularly the pitching staff, a chance to rest up. And I think that they're going to be off to the races when this thing starts, which is good, because it could only be 50, 70 games. So you really don't have time for that 10-game losing streak anymore.
Well, Mike, I want to thank you for coming on the air with us for Conversations, which for those watching is our conversation show with a member of the community, a member of the sports world, or quite frankly, anywhere we can find someone that has something interesting and engaging for us. Again, 12 p.m. Wednesdays. It's on our Facebook page at Congregation Emmanuel. It's also on our website. The next 2 guests, we have Chris Harrison, an audacious hospitality writer for the Union for Reform Judaism. And then 1 week later, we'll have the Vice President of Strengthening Congregations, Amy Asen, to talk about what synagogues can look forward to, what they're trying to flex to as it relates to the pandemic. It'll be an interesting conversation. Mike, thanks again for coming on with us this week.
Jason, you're the man. It's my privilege. I really do appreciate your time.
All right, everyone, have a good day and look forward to having baseball before long. Take care.